From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. We're live in the 22 News Plus studios, and I grew up here in Western Massachusetts, and there's a number of colleges and higher education learning facilities throughout our area, but there's one I know very little about. It's Hampshire College. I'm very fortunate today to be joined by their new president, Jennifer Chrisler. So, President Chrisler, thank you so very much for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here.
No, this is wonderful because, like I said, I've driven by it. It's back there off the road.
Yep.
You know, it's everybody knows about it, but I don't really know about it. And it's been around for 60 years, I think 1965 or so.
Yep. The original idea that sort of conceived of Hampshire College started in 1958, actually, and it was a project of the three colleges in the Pioneer Valley and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And they brought together experts from all across the company to imagine what a sort of radical new departure in liberal arts education would be. And that actually gave birth to a document that then created the idea of Hampshire College. And in 1965, they began fundraising for the college and starting to make plans for the pedagogy of the college. And we opened our doors to our first class in 1970. So we just celebrated a 55th anniversary of students on campus partaking of the education.
Was it always the campus that it is now, or did it start somewhere else and more?
No, it's always been where it is, which is it's located in Amherst, Massachusetts. A tiny portion of our campus is also in Hadley, Massachusetts. And that was the original site of the college. And what was really exciting about the birth of the college was that they were crafting and building a pedagogy in collaboration with students when we first opened our doors. And that has been a core central tenet of the college since its founding, that it is student-led in collaboration with faculty, designed to let students ask a whole array of questions and to explore knowledge in a lot of different ways. And they do that in partnership with faculty as they go through their
Which is
time.
Completely different way of educating than any other university and college in our area.
Yes, it was a radical departure at the time of its conception.
1960s radicalism.
Yeah, it was 1960s radicalism, sort of pushing against what would be considered the norms, right? And it is the case that even today, so much of what happens at Hampshire is really, really distinctive and different than the way most residential undergraduate liberal arts colleges educate their students. At the same time, many, many of the things that we conceived of and do at Hampshire College have become best practices in other colleges and universities, either in small pieces or in parts. So we're very proud of the legacy that our pedagogy has created in higher education more broadly.
It has been a long time since I stepped foot on a college campus. Yeah. So, but having spent 35 years in the business world now, it seems as if a liberal arts education, which once, and please, I know you're going to correct me, but liberal arts education, which was once great in the 60s, 70s, sort of switched. It's now STEM education. It's more hands-on. Do you still see the demand and the desire for a liberal arts education?
Yes, there's still obviously a huge demand. I mean, there are any number of liberal arts colleges that still exist in the United States. And I actually think right now, given everything that's happening in the world, given the complexity and pace of change that we see, students are going to benefit more from a liberal arts education today than they ever will. You know, the essentials of a liberal arts education, right? The ability to think critically, to ask the kinds of questions that are going to help identify problems that need to be changed, the ability to communicate both in writing and verbally, bringing different modes and methods of learning together. Those in a rapidly changing economy, those skills in a rapidly changing world are going to be more essential than ever because it's about the capacity as a lifelong learner to do the things that you need to do in your jobs and your community that will actually help you And I think Hampshire does it uniquely well. So
The way you describe it, it sounds as if these are basically, for lack of a better description, your core classes. These are the things that you need to know to really have a successful life, no matter what your career path is. It's the critical thinking. It's the working together as a group in a community. Because you look at the industry, the world nowadays. Most people sit in their basements on their computers working from home.
Some do, yeah,
which is good and bad.
Yeah,
but it sounds as if Hampshire kind of lays that important base and that groundwork for interaction and sociability and really global interaction.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true, right? If you want to future-proof yourself as a young person entering, I mean, let's face it, right? This economy in particular in the United States right now is a really challenging one. So if you're going to be the kind of person who's going to be able to adapt and to be resilient in the face of challenge, you need to approach your education in a particular way, we believe. And at Hampshire, that pedagogical approach really is about students being at the forefront of their own educational journey. They are the entrepreneurs of their own education. So they put together a series of classes with their advisors to explore topics or to engage subjects that are deeply meaningful to them. And by the time they progress through their 4 years, by the time they get to the end of it, they're engaged in a year-long independent study that creates a huge body of work that they then share with the campus community and the public at large. It could be a gallery show. It could be a really deep research paper. It could be an experience of creating social change and documenting that as a blueprint for other people to follow. And those skills, right? Asking good questions, assembling people who can help you identify resources, failing, iterating, being resilient in the face of that failure, we think is a special sauce that helps create a lifetime of capacity to be nimble and to change.
We are up on our first commercial break. We'll have more about Hampshire College when we come back, so stay with us.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of InFocus. I am your host, Patrick Berry. Sitting across from me today is the president of Hampshire College, Jennifer Chrisler. Ms. Chrisler, thank you so very much for joining me. I appreciate it. We've learned a lot about Hampshire College, but there's still plenty to go. One of the things you alluded to in the first part of our conversation was it's a student-led learning process.
Yep.
How is that different from Westfield State, Western New England, AIC, UMass, BU, BC, Notre Dame, you pick it.
Yep.
And the reason I ask that is, as a freshman, or whichever year you are at any of those universities, you pick your classes.
Yep.
How is Hampshire College different?
Yep. So our students come in, some of them come in knowing exactly a question that they're deeply curious about, and they will meet with their faculty advisor, and that advisor will say, oh, you're really interested in sustainable water systems. Great. We're going to start you with, let's talk about what kinds of classes you could take in that space, and they'll start to explore that. Some of our students come in not knowing at all what they want to engage with, and our faculty will work with them and say,
any other college
here's a whole range of things you might think about. But never are you going to, as a Hampshire student, be told, you have to take this course and this course and this course and this course. You have to do it in this order, in this succession plan. And if you don't, you have failed to really thrive as a student. And at most other liberal arts institutions, you're going to be boxed into a major with a very specific set of definitions, with a very specific set of classes. And we really believe at Hampshire that students are going to do much better if they're asking questions and their natural curiosity, much like young learners, right? If you watch young kids in a classroom, like their own curiosity guiding their own inquiry is going to be a much more fulfilling and rewarding experience. And they're going to do better, learn more, grapple with tougher questions because they're driving their own energy in that direction.
So prior to the admissions process, is it an interview process where somebody, a staff member from the college, sits with every prospective freshman and just kind of goes through, what are your interests? What do you like? And then help them define what their learning process becomes?
That's certainly conversations that our admissions counselors will have with students, prospective students as they're thinking about Hampshire. Some of our students come knowing exactly what the Hampshire pedagogy is and what they can get from that. And certainly by the time they've said yes to us, they're going to sit down with faculty and advisors and hear about sort of how to develop themselves on that path and on that journey, because we are helping them grow as learners themselves and really becoming agencies of their own education.
So no matter what that student's interest may be, the counselor will kind of guide them through their next, is it a 4-year school or?
It is, yeah. Okay. Most people complete in 4 years, yep. And we don't actually have freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors the way most colleges do. We have divisions, so Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3, and you sort of hit a series of like milestones, and that advances you through that process. The great thing, too, about Hampshire College is we are part of the 5-college consortium in the Valley, so that means that our students can take classes at Smith College, Amherst College, Mount Holyoke College, and UMass Amherst. And that's easy. You don't have to do anything except register for those classes.
And the credits and everything are transferable?
All the credits are transferable. And that's true of the students at those other places. They can come to Hampshire and take classes. So it's a really extraordinarily rich experience for our students, because if they don't find something they want at Hampshire in terms of a class or a course that sort of fits very specifically what they're looking at, they can go get it at one of the other institutions.
So is there, at Hampshire, I'm assuming you have dorms, it's standard campus life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you're able to take advantage of those other nearby colleges for courses that Hampshire may not offer, or maybe a specific specialty.
Yeah. Well, so like, for example, I remember we had a student a couple of years ago. She's now working at Accenture. That was her first job out after graduation, who was interested in construction engineering, which, is a very kind of particular brand of study. And so but she wanted to do it in a way that was holistic, that thought about the world in a broader array of kind of questions. She wanted to do ethical business work. And so she got core elements of that process and education at Hampshire, but then she took some engineering courses at places like UMass and Smith. She took business courses at UMass. She was like a really interesting, kind of fun student who was also deeply interested in arts and creative endeavors. And so she was able to pursue that while she was at Hampshire, like a very well-rounded, holistic approach to developing yourself.
It's interesting, as we're having this conversation, a comment I made early on about most colleges, universities focus on STEM.
Mm-hmm.
As the world evolves, a lot of articles have been coming out recently how artificial intelligence is beginning to take some of those jobs. So it seems as if Hampshire, I wouldn't say is immune to that, but it sounds like your process for learning is more human brain centric than technology centric.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing about the liberal arts, and Hampshire does it exceptionally well. So you look at a problem, let's just even say, COVID and the pandemic. There's a technical solution to the problem of a pandemic, right? The discovery of vaccines or a way in which you can administer healthcare. But if you can't actually get humans to take that up, right, that's not just a science problem. It's also a human psychology problem. It's a community problem. It's an education problem. It's a communication problem. So we really think it's important to do all those elements, not just focus narrowly in one particular area.
So does the school have does it follow a standard calendar like every other school?
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
because the way you're describing it sounds as if, I know there are universities across the country that, trimesters or year-round learning.
Yep.
And the way you were describing it sounded more of a year-round learning process rather than your standard Labor Day, Memorial Day type.
Yeah, no, we are standard in that way, although I would say that our students are doing really interesting things when they're not in their standard semesters. But the other thing that we have is the ability to experiment and be experimenting in the way that we deliver our education. So a great innovation that happened a couple of years ago is something called Semester Unbound, where we had students, faculty, and staff engaged in a project for a whole semester. That's all they did. They didn't take, the standard 3 or 4 courses. And the project was to develop a new climate action plan for the college because we had achieved carbon neutrality 5 years ahead of the schedule that we had set for ourselves. And so that class worked with our faculty and staff together. They interviewed leading experts. They talked to community members. They went to conferences. And they ultimately developed an actual climate action plan for the college that the Board of Trustees eventually adopted and endorsed. And that was their semester's worth of production. So it was a great outcome and a really radically different way of thinking about learning over the course of a semester.
That is fascinating. The way the students got involved in solving a problem, a real life problem.
And they didn't just get involved, they actually led solving the problem. The faculty and staff there were to help support them in their exploration, but they did the work. They did the interviews. They did the writing. They did the planning. They put together the PowerPoint presentation. And I can't think
These
of
are
a
18 to
better
22-year-olds
blueprint
doing all of
for
that.
what it means to work in the world and to solve problems in the world.
Fantastic. We are up on our next commercial break. Stay with us. There's still plenty more to learn about Hampshire College. We'll be right back.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. Across the desk from me today, we have Jennifer Chrisler. She is the president of Hampshire College up in Amherst, with a small portion of the campus, you said, is in Hadley as well. I am learning so much about your college. It's mind-boggling to me, the change in the different way of learning that was designed nearly 60 years ago for kids to become successful in life. And in the way we've talked about it so far, we talked about STEM and how my feeling now is Hampshire College is sort of set up to educate students to not beat STEM, but getting careers that really have limited or low artificial intelligence impacts. Am I on the right track with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, technology is going to change. The pace of that change is getting more and more rapid. And if you're going to be the kind of human who's going to withstand those kinds of shifts, you have to be nimble, you have to be entrepreneurial, you have to be able to embrace sort of uncertainty. And I think Hampshire students, because of the way that they drive their own educational process, gain those capacities in really real and meaningful ways. And then you bring in the fact that they're also thinking about how to communicate through creative outlets, how to understand different peoples and cultures and ideas. You put that all together and you're really creating for graduates the kind of lifelong habits that you want to see and that they can navigate through the world in.
Let's talk a little bit about those graduates. So in 60 years, you've had quite a few graduates.
We have.
There's some statistics out there about the graduates of Hampshire College. Greater propensity for PhDs, small business owners. Tell me a little bit about that, and maybe some of the success stories. Well, I'm sure they're all success stories, but some of the maybe some of the names people might recognize.
Yeah. So yes, we I think produce extraordinary outcomes for our alums. 25% of them go on to create their own businesses. We're a top 3% producer of PhDs in the nation. I mean, among the names that people might recognize, and they span kind of a whole array of areas, but, everybody from Ken Burns, who, right now obviously is out talking about his new documentary about the American Revolution. You have actors like Lupita Nyong'o and Liev Schreiber, who are both very well known.
They went to Hampshire?
They did, yeah. But then you also have extraordinary people like Gary Marcus, who's a leading thinker on artificial intelligence right now, to Jamie Citrin, who served in the White House. So just like huge numbers of people who have gone on to do really extraordinary work. And I think it's because they know how to ask questions differently, and then they know how to pursue gaining the kind of knowledge and information that's really going to make a difference in the world. We sometimes say if you want something to really get the kind of attention and resilience and resolve that you need to solve an intractable problem, you just need a Hampshire graduate in the room, because they're going to do it differently and they're going to think about it differently. And you just want a Hampshire, your way out of that. And we've seen that time and time again.
How big is the student population? I think of just up the road, UMass is 20, 30,000 students. How big is Hampshire?
Yeah, we have about 800 students in our program. We hover anywhere between 800 and 1,100, depending on where we are in the cycle of admissions. So we are a small residential college. I think that's really important. The great news, though, is that we're part of a bigger, broader community. Right. So, we have, young people who are on our campus going to our early learning center or participating in programs at partners that we have on our campus. We have an extraordinary population of people who come and play pickleball on our campus. We have, swim teams that come and practice in our pool. So we are very much of the Western Mass community. We employ about 300 people. We're the 5th largest employer in Amherst. And these are people who live and work and, participate in our communities all across Western Massachusetts.
Is it easy? Let me rephrase the question. So you said the student population between 800 and 1,100.
Yep.
Is that sort of your wheelhouse, or can you get 2,000, or is 2,000 like, whoa?
No. Our wheelhouse is 800 to 1,100. Okay. On a good day, we could house about 1,200 students on our campus. So that's the right size for us. And we think, given the pedagogical approach that we have, we think that's the place to be right now. Right. I hold out hopes for, I really do believe our form of education is the best way. And so if that's actually the case, then at some point I don't want to be constrained by the 1,100 beds that we have on our campus, because I think more people could benefit from a Hampshire education.
So how do you recruit students? Because again, we're going back 40-something years when I was in high school. I don't recall whether Hampshire College had a table at college day or whatever. Yeah. But is that the standard? Because you have a unique form of education, do you still follow the same format of recruitment?
There are some things that we do that are like most other institutions: going to high schools, going to college fairs, communicating with people via email, et cetera. What I love about the way that we approach recruiting students, though, is that we put our students at the front of that process as often as we can. So you come to an accepted student day or an open house on our campus, you're going to see students at the front of the stage, students at the front of the podium talking about the experience, because we want to model, right, that our students are the ones who are driving their education. They drive so much of what happens on campus.
It's really no different than a business like 22 News going to a career fair. You put the staff members there rather than the management.
Yep.
Because the staff members will share the excitement.
Yeah.
No offense to you, but the management of the college will tell you one story. Yeah. And the kids or the employees will tell you a different story.
Yeah. No, students and alums are two of our best advocates in terms of recruiting new people to the college. Having said that, being on shows like today's show is really important, because we also know parents have a big say in how students are thinking about navigating their college sort of path and finding schools and institutions that are a good fit. So, if you have a high schooler who's a sophomore or a junior or a senior, and you want a place that's really going to allow your student to thrive and grow as a learner, and where they can drive their own education and put together lots of different sort of disciplines and modes of learning, if you are a place that thinks narrative evaluation rather than grades is a better way to judge a student's progress, that is a place that is Hampshire College. We aren't just test blind, like we are anti-standardized tests, because we don't think that's a measure of a student's potential. We think
every child learns differently.
Yeah, every child learns differently. And we think there are lots of ways that you can grow and thrive as a learner. And Hampshire College really embraces that.
Fantastic. And I'm looking up, it's hampshire.edu, correct?
Hampshire.edu.
Fantastic. Yeah. President Jennifer Chrisler, thank you so very much for sharing some of your time today to educate me and our viewers about Hampshire College. Good seeing you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.